Insane in the membrane.
Hello and welcome to another edition of your favourite podcast, Insane in the Membrane, with me, Rich Wilson, and this week I'm joined by the brilliant Stephen Mullan. Hello.
Hello, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Mate, it's our pleasure. And are you on holiday? Holiday?
I am on holiday, yeah. I'm about an hour's south drive from Lisbon in Portugal.
Fuck. Mate,
yeah,
thanks for coming on.
No, not at all. My pleasure.
Dude, how is it? I've never been to Lisbon. Is it nice?
Yeah, it's amazing. I know it's a bit of a cool place to visit now, but I'm actually here because my daughter was born here.
Wow.
And so we lived here for a little bit. Her mum is obviously from here, and so we lived here for a little bit when she was born, and then all her grandparents and aunts and uncles and all that are here, so I try and join her and her mum for a little bit every summer before I go off to the wildness of Edinburgh Fringe, you know. So it's great. It's a little bit of a second home for me. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. Oh, mate, of all the places to have a second home.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great, man, especially before Edinburgh. Yeah. How are you feeling about Edinburgh? Are you pumped?
I wouldn't say that, but not being negative, but I think I've just learned from the last few years that for me personally, I have to make sure that the batteries are recharged before I go and do it, you know. I don't know, maybe I'm missing out on it, but I feel like it's not talked about enough that how brutal it is. It's really tough, like, you know.
Yeah.
It's physically, I find it physically really tough. So this year, like, I had all the work done and I'm ready to go nice and early. So I kind of just decided to try and play it this way, that I could take a bit of a break before it and really recharge the batteries. Because all the previewing and all that kind of crack is exhausting as well. I'm not as young as I was.
But the thing is, as well, what people don't realise is that when they'll come to see a finished version of your show, they don't realise that all those other, like, 20, 30, however many times you've done it, all those other times where you've done it to 4 people, or it's not been a great night, or you're still working it out, and it takes its toll, man. It does take its toll.
Big time. I think there's never a time for me in preview session or trying to put the show together where I haven't had at least one walk home where I've contemplated, like, what I'm going to do for work. You know, it's kind of it goes that deep that you're like, what am I doing with my life? I need to go back to the building sites or whatever, you know.
Dude, I remember a few years ago, it was myself and Esther Manito, and we kept putting on previews and nobody came, to the point we started texting each other about what our favourite chairs were. Like, because it was just.
That's how many chairs you're looking at, and it's brutal. Like, I found that it was. I started. Funny, that's Esther and I would have started out at the same time in London, but I find London is in particular even harder again to try and get yourself up and running with the previews, because there's so much stuff on that people aren't, you know. They're not arsed going to someone's preview, and it's like it's brutal. But having said that, on the flip side, London audiences are tough. That it makes you good, I find. Yeah,
oh god, yeah. Well, I think gigging, we get these preconceived ideas about what a certain place is like. Like, I used to have, I had a big thing about Liverpool. I was always like, no, they're all comedians there. They're all funny. They don't need us, and they don't like us, and blah blah blah. And then I went there and died my first weekend, and then I had a real issue with it. Like, I was scared to go back, and it built up for ages. And then after a while, you go back, and go, no, this is brilliant. What is wrong with me?
Yeah. And what do you think it was at the start, the first few times that it wasn't going well for you in Liverpool?
I think it was just me. I think I went up there with the wrong attitude. I remember going up and going, I'm from London, I don't like it either. And straight away they went, well, you're a cunt then.
Yeah. Exactly. And those situations, sometimes you're better off just calling yourself out on that, like, you know, and then they'll love you.
yeah. But I'd only been going a few years, so I didn't have the skills to sort of come out of it. I just had to die for an entire weekend, and then I never went back for a while. But I think that's, I know people talk about London in that way. I guess because I'm from there, so it was different. But
yeah, it is. It's definitely different for you because you're used to the vibe of the place. Because don't get me, I loved living in London. I love London as a city. I really do. But that's not to get away from the fact that it's hard as well. And that's kind of what I loved about it as well. Because I actually got more working in restaurants when I was over there, and I learned a lot working in restaurants in London because if you want to survive as a restaurant, you kind of have to be the best at what you do. So there's no messing about. You kind of like, if it's not great, we'll piss off. Do you know what I mean? And there was like a culture of excellence. It's definitely a British culture. Maybe it's a London culture of excellence, of wanting to be the best and not being ashamed of that as well. And I did learn a lot from that, because growing up in Ireland, we wouldn't be ones to naturally blow our own trumpets or to kind of strive to be the best at something, because other people go, who the fuck do you think you are? Do you know what I mean? Kind of acting like that. But London definitely taught me the culture of excellence and wanting to be better, and it's not a bad thing. No,
I know what you mean. It does tell you, it does teach you to up your game and go, all right,
totally.
This is what I've got to do.
Totally.
But it's like with Ireland. I mean, I've never gigged in Ireland, and all of my favourite comics are either American or Irish. Like growing up watching Dave Allen and Tommy Tiernan and all these people, and
no way, right?
Oh man, Dylan Moran and people like that, and you go, and because I remember when I first met, there's a comedian called Keith Carter, and his now ex-wife was from like up near Donegal or something like that,
right?
And I remember when we first met, she was really weird with me because of my accent. Right. And it took a while. And then we had a conversation. She said, it's because all the soldiers in the village sound like you. And so in my head, that accent triggers me. So then from that, I'm like, I can't gig in Ireland ever again. I can't go there. And I'm like, you can. Yeah. You'll be all right.
Totally can, yeah. And it's like, Ireland is such a small place, and it's so different. I mean, not dissimilar to England. I mean, the north versus the south of England are very, very different, but it's kind of the same in Ireland as well. That voice might be triggering for people in the north, for example. Might be, and other people wouldn't give a shit about it. But like, I would say in general, ironically, in the south or the Republic, people, it's a very different relationship to the Troubles, for example, or being triggered by that kind of stuff, because I mean, I'm very invested in it and know what's going on because my grandparents lived on the border, so very hyper aware of it. But my generation, growing up in Cork, right in the south, didn't give a shit about it. Like, don't give. And there's definitely a tension between north and south on the island, in that a lot of northerners would think, and they're right, that people down south don't give a shit about what's going on up there, and they're right, and so that breeds its own tension in itself. But yeah, like nowadays, certainly comedically, like people love coming in here because we watch so much British TV and we watch so much of British culture, that coming over and hearing that voice and hearing an accent like yours is like, straight away I know what, if I hear you doing stand-up comedy, we'd automatically sit into, this guy knows what he's doing just by the accent. You know what I mean?
I'm the same with Irish accent. Like, this is going to be good. Just how you got to think, because the first Irish voice I ever heard was Dave Allen. So
yeah, of course.
It's just in you. Where did you start? Because we've never met, and I find that
we've never crossed paths.
No, man, and I find that really fascinating because I MC a lot, and so normally I've met most people, but we've never crossed paths, man. That's weird.
I had a weird trajectory, to be fair, because I did start in London, and about a few months after me starting, I was going out with this girl for 7 months, and after the 7 months we found out she was pregnant.
Oh wow.
So all of a sudden this surprise pregnancy kind of threw a spanner in the works. Like, me going out with her and me starting stand-up comedy happened in the same month. And it was a tricky enough pregnancy, and it was a young enough relationship, and we were really up against it. So I very much kind of was on the open mic circuit in London, just starting to get the open spots in the club, but I wasn't hanging around and I wasn't talking to anybody, because I was just like, gotta leg it, do this and get back and look after her and stuff like that. And then it all happened very last minute at the end of the pregnancy, where we were going to have, my daughter was to be born in Portugal, and then last minute I had an agent in Ireland, because I'd actually started out as an actor, and they said they would look after me for the stand-up, but you have to come back. So very last minute it was decided, boom, I'm out of the UK, and went back to Dublin.
Wow.
And so I ended up kind of just, I had built myself to a certain point where I got onto the open spots in the clubs in London, and then I was gone. I was out of there,
Shit, man.
So then it was only kind of dipping in now and then. I'd do a weekend here or there, a Top Secret or whatever. But again, travel, and I'd travel a lot around Ireland, like opening shows for other touring comics. And so that's kind of a good chunk of my work, and touring my own stuff. but it doesn't allow me to get the weekends over in the UK. So I kind of like the likes of Esther Manito or Mickey Overman or Helen Bauer and all that stuff. We all kind of started out at the same time, and I just see them for a split second in Edinburgh, and that's it. And you can see they're all best pals, and I was kind of taken out of that, you know. So it was it was a funny one, yeah.
Oh man, I mean this has been spoken about many times on the podcast. Is that I was a young dad, so I had kids when I was about 19, 20.
Right.
And we'd only been together a month after she found out she was pregnant.
Right.
And then we just went, yeah, fuck it, because we were let's just do it. And it was only like a couple of years later when we sort of started getting older and the resentment sort of set in. It was like, oh, hang on a minute, fucking no, I had shit to do and now I'm doing this.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
It must have been tricky because we didn't really know each other. That's the thing at all.
I think that's the tough, because so myself and my daughter's mother separated nearly 3 years ago now, and I think there's no ill feeling between us. I mean, I'm here on holidays with her family, so it's not that bad, you know. But yeah, it was stressful. Now I wasn't as young as you. I was just turned 30, so I was just kind of like, well, it's gotta. Pardon the expression, it might be popular to say these days, but it was what I believe at the time. I just have to man up, and I'm going to have to support her. And I had made that decision that I would support her and love her no matter what. And obviously, it's very different for a woman because, you know, they're the one growing the child and they're the one carrying the pregnancy, and they go through all the trials and tribulations of that. And it was tough on her. She, you know, we were both not from London. And then we ended up moving to Ireland, which she backed. She was very supportive of, but that doesn't mean it wasn't tough. And she's adapting to a new culture and all that, and being a mother for the first time. And yeah, it was tricky. And by the time the breakup had happened, I had empathy for her actually. And I talked about this in my last hour. That was like, she's been through so much. She'd been through so much in those 5 years that I got it. She didn't have space to love me. She didn't have the room to for me in her head at all, and I had empathy for that. But it was still brutal, and we do, like, we've always put our daughter first, but it is tough. I can imagine what you went through at that age, the building of the resentment and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm sure it was tough on you as well, man. Man,
I get it. I totally get it. Like you say, you know, you said she didn't have space for you in her head, and that's true. It's true, man. Because they've got shit going on. That's. You know, we just, mate, and it's funny, and again, like, we're really good mates now, and we have been for many, many years, and my boys are everything. Like you said, you make that decision, you go, no, I'm a dad, I'm going to be there, regardless of what happens. These are my boys, and that's it. Yeah. And then I just had another one now, so we're starting again with somebody else, and. Yeah, it's nice to be in a position now where I understand it a bit more now. I'm like you've just said, because I didn't know all that back then. I just was a kid and just didn't think. But now I'm like, oh fuck, I see this now. It's not just the actual baby. It's just the constant. Well, they're in that constant cycle of shit that we never have to deal with, or we can't deal with. So, I've got a better understanding of it.
The cycle of being a woman, like, it's brutal. Like, she went through serious health issues that were women related throughout all this at the same time as well. And it's just like, on a lot of fronts, we don't have to deal with so much, so we can't understand. Like, even holding my child for the first time after she's born, it's the first time that I physically have anything to do with the pregnancy or the birth or nothing. And she has just been through 9 months of fucking hell, and, you know, she's to push the thing out of her. We can't understand that. We're not built to understand that, you know. So it's a journey.
Oh, dude. And then every now and again you sort of forget, and you're like, oh god, what's wrong with you? It's like, you've given your life force to this other human being. Yeah, I've said this on there before, but I even found out recently that even flamingos fade when they have a kid, and it takes a while for the colour to come back into their feathers.
Wow.
Like, there you go. Yeah, that's why mums look fucked at the beginning. They just,
of course, and it is exactly what you said. they have created a life force. It's insane. I do remember watching my daughter being born and all this, and I wasn't freaked out. I remember I had an overwhelming feeling of going, this is the most natural thing in the world, because it's obviously happened, that's how we exist, but also this is the most amazing thing in the world. What she's doing is unbelievable. And yeah, it was, and yeah, I totally get it. Well, I think I read something recently that it takes a woman's body 7 years to get back to what it was like before the birth. It's like,
Jesus Christ.
yeah, and I've got a stiff back.
Yeah. I've got a bit of a belly now. I need to go and sort this out.
Yeah.
Oh man. But that's it's nice that you've still got a nice relationship though, and that's cool, because it's so many people just can't. They just don't. For whatever reason, they just can't pull that off. There's just friction, and you know.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. I don't know how you found it starting out with you guys, but it's funny, when there's a lot of love, and there still is a lot of love between us, there's a lot of hurt, and the hurt can be deeper for some reason. So it's like, we've never had a situation where, like, our daughter has always come first, but it's kind of made things, I don't know, I'm talking a little bit about this in my show at the moment, it's made things tricky with regards to trying to move on and trying to find love, or trying to find a loving relationship with somebody else. And it's kind of hard, because in a weird way you have to let this family go, and it's tricky, you know. Yeah,
of course it is, man. Yeah. It's but going, like you mentioned earlier, like you were talking about, for want of a better phrase, that sometimes you've got to sort of step up, you've got to man up a bit. Yeah. What we're finding now, the conversations we're having, because it's always, and still very important, like, men need to talk. They absolutely need to talk, and men should be emotional and should show their feelings, and should be able to cry when they're upset and things like that. Yes. Then there is still that instinct in us to, as you said, to fucking, you've got to step up and be a man, for want of a better phrase. Yeah. And so now we're trying to find that balance, you know.
And it's a tricky balance, because I think we're this generation of fathers, or the first generation of fathers, that are doing it in a very radically different way to our fathers and what they were doing. And like, I don't hold anything against my parents, because I know what they went through in their upbringing, and you know, they're only doing what they were taught, whatever. Yeah. But we are expected to be certainly a much higher level of emotional intelligence than my parents were. Yeah. And especially in the relationship with our kids. And so it is tricky, because I'm there for any father who is doing it on this level, because it is tricky, because we don't necessarily have great mentors, if that makes sense. No. And we are the first, you know, even that's what I talk about in the show at the moment, the understanding of what love is, and I still grapple with that, because you know, my dad said to me, because he came to see the show at one point, and he was just like, you know, my father never hugged me my whole life. And I was like, right, well, that explains everything. Do you know what I mean? And but genuinely, I'm going, fuck, that's fucked up. You know, that is fucked up. But it's like, what, you know. Yeah, it is a journey, and it's constantly making mistakes. And my daughter teaches me so much, and if I want to encourage her to be a certain way in the world, then she has to be able to see me say sorry a lot, to admit that I'm wrong a lot, to be emotional, and to be honest about when I'm sad or upset about something and stuff like that. And it's not natural, because I mean, it probably is natural, but when you've had years and years and years of living in macho culture, you've built up all these walls that you don't want to show any weakness. But it's funny what a little 6-year-old can do to pull it out of you and teach you some lessons, you know. Oh,
fuck yeah! I think it's understanding that love takes many sort of forms, and sometimes you don't recognise love. I've been guilty of that, or I've thought it was love and it was something else, and you know, and I think it's tricky to get your head around. I mean, when you have your kid, I mean, that's a love like no other. That's a As soon as you see the kid, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that's right there. That's the one. Yeah, that's got me right in the fucking feels.
Yeah.
But it's hard, man. It's hard to navigate. And then you love someone, and then what I find tricky is that, you know, there was that point where you're in a relationship and it was so intense and it was all there and you loved each other so much and you were everything to each other, and then down the line you break up, and you just like, I never want to be in the same room as that fucking person again.
Yeah.
I find that amazing. And then, like, when you were so intense with somebody, to then you will never speak to that person again. That blows my mind.
I have. Thank you for sharing that, because I've actually gone through some realizations on that only the last few weeks, where I had to. This word came to me, and my ex had done or said something, and I fucking lost it. I lost the plot. And I was so upset, and I was so hurt, and I was so angry, and I wasn't going to talk to her, and that was it, and it was brutal, and it wasn't logical, because if I went and explained it to somebody else, everyone's going, huh? Let it go or whatever. But the word that came to me, that I realised, as soon as I started using that word, it allowed me to be able to go to her and speak about it. The word was trauma, and there was so much stuff that had happened between us that she might have hurt me about something, and I was like really broken inside, but because of the situation back then, I just had to, there's no point in expressing this now, you just got to hold on, you just got to carry on through, because you got to put your daughter and her mother first and all that stuff, that it just builds up and builds up and builds up, and there's actually trauma there that, like, I didn't feel understood in a situation, or I felt I was really, really deeply hurt by something, but I couldn't express it at the right time, or I couldn't express it in the right way. And when that word trauma came to me, and I was able to use that and go back to her, it's interesting, all the feelings of, as soon as the admission of something that really, really hurt me, whether it was logical or not, and she is able to go, I hear that really hurt you, I hear that. It's amazing. It's amazing, the release of it, and that she will listen to you to understand. So how did that hurt you? How did that, it did amazing things for me, and then all of a sudden that real energy of, like, I hate you so much, I'm never going to talk to you again, is gone. Yeah, it's completely gone. Mate. And that was huge for me, huge. And it's only happened in the last few weeks,
it just goes to show what sort of a relationship you had, that you were able to go back and go, hang on a minute, I want to say this to you, because so often, well, not often, but every now and again, I was in a relationship that was pretty heavy, and I've gone through all the emotions of sort of shaking it off, and then going, fuck it, oh no, I need to say this to her, and then now I'm at a point, I've suddenly got to the other end of it, and I've gone, there is no point. I'm just gonna. That just is in the past. I need to just leave that. Whatever I think I need to say to her doesn't need to be said. Let's just cut it off and move on. That's the past now, and that's a nice place to be. Where I'm sort of like,
definitely,
it's never gonna be right. Never gonna be out. Let's just fucking leave it. Yeah.
Yeah, a big part of it, isn't it, is that you've been wronged, and that you feel that you've been wronged, and you want to say the thing to the other person, and quite often what happens is, like, you have been wronged, but you have to let it go. Yeah, you have to let it go, and it's your it's your perception that you've been wronged also, because the other perception from the other side can be something different, and it's kind of. I think finding ways to deal with. I think I'm probably listening and reading to too much of Gabor Mate. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He's a Canadian psychologist he does a lot of work in the field of attention deficit disorder, and he's worked with a lot of addicts and stuff like that. But he talks a lot about trauma and how it's connected to so many conditions that we have these days. And you kind of makes a lot of it makes sense, And when that word trauma came to me, to talking to the ex about stuff, it was like, it wasn't logical, but having the moment to be able to process and go, that's a trauma that I need to process for myself. And thankfully she was able to do that with me, but there can be scenarios where people aren't, so you have to find a way of processing it for yourself.
Yeah. And has that helped you in other areas of your life, recognising that that word trauma?
I think so. I think it's just kind of come back to me. Maybe I remembered it from a few years ago. I've done lots of different types of therapy, not necessarily how would you say? I don't necessarily talk about it in. It's not all good, is what I'm saying. Sometimes therapy is terrible, and you go, "This is the worst thing I could have done, and I shouldn't have talked about that." Or you're opening a can of worms here.
Oh God, yeah,
that's no good to be opening. Do you know what I mean? But I think I look back on, like, I've had some heavy. My first show, which was about like how I ended up in a psychiatric ward from substance abuse, basically at 17 or 18 years of age. I look back at that now and go, I can totally understand exactly why I was doing that. And I remember at the time thinking, like, it was fairly heavy shit, it was fairly heavy, my life under threat and all that stuff. But I remember kind of going, at the time going, yeah, but I'm right. The feeling that I'm feeling right now, wanting to end everything, is right. It's a very honest feeling. And now I can look back at that time and go, yeah, I was right in the moment of the feeling, because that's what I was feeling at that time, because I was reacting to all these other things that were hurting me, and I was totally trapped into a corner and I couldn't see a way out. So it definitely helps me to understand definitely a lot of things about me and have empathy for other people as well.
Yeah,
like I was privileged enough to work for a couple of years with heroin addicts in Dublin
who were
coming out of prison, and you learn a lot through that. You learn a lot, because you might see somebody on the street and they're aggressive to you, or they're trying to rob you, or they're trying to etc etc etc. But then you hear the life stories of these people and you go, this is all trauma. It's all trauma. It's all just, if you grow up and both your parents are heroin addicts, then what chance have you got?
Yeah, where are you going to go? I mean, this is the thing with addiction on that level, and it sounds like, I mean, you were in the thick of it when you were going through it. People don't understand that all you care about when you kind of come to in the morning is getting your next fix, be it totally. Drink, be it heroin, be it whatever it is, and you don't give a shit how you get it.
Because you don't want to feel.
Yeah, and this is it, and this constant cycle of, oh God, right, I need to escape this as soon as. And I know that as well. I was never an addict, but I know that certain drugs became a bit of an issue, because I was like, I want to do that again, because I felt so euphoric when I was doing it. I want to feel like that all the time. And you're going, hang on a minute, this is the 6th weekend in a row that you're doing this. Oh, it's Tuesday and you're doing this. Oh, okay, hang on a minute. I read the book, The Grass Arena, and oh mate, it really is. It's about a guy. It's a true story. The guy was on the streets for 15 years, and it's his story about what it's actually like to be on the streets and what you have to do. And the Grass Arena was where people would. There was always this. It was this park, and there was always fights going on. And then someone got killed there, and all that. And it was such a fascinating. It changed my entire outlook towards homeless people and addicts on the street. What must it have been like when you're in the thick of it? I mean, I suppose you're not thinking about anything else other than getting your next fix.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't thankfully have an issue with addiction per se, but I had substance abuse issues for sure, and it was all prescription stuff.
Oh, really?
And I had figured out. I mean, I think I'd seen something in a film one day, but anyway, I just abused a lot of prescription stuff, and I was able to figure out how to make cocktails and all this kind of stuff with alcohol, and but it's just a dark time. I would say that, like, I think the main thing, and it's probably the main thing for most addicts as well, would be, is like, there's a lack of hope. There's a lack of hope, or an ability to see another perspective, and see that there is a way out, or there is another way to live life, and then the feeling of getting high, essentially, you're just free of it. You're just free of. The only way it's a bleak depression, but like, I can remember feeling this physical. I remember somebody trying to talk me through a meditation, and I wasn't able to do it at all, and I felt like having the biggest black hole in my stomach, and it was endless, and it was you're constantly falling into this never-ending black hole, and it was awful, and it was very difficult at a very young age. And I think a lot of things that didn't help were like, the upbringing that I had. My father was an evangelical preacher, so
oh, wow.
So
Jesus.
And I grew up in a council estate, so it was, you want to fit in with all the other kids. You don't want to get bullied because your dad's a preacher, in 1990s Ireland, but you got to fit in with all the other kids. So then you do anything to fit in with all the other kids, and then you go too far, and then you become too much of the messer, and you become too much of the troublemaker, and you start getting in more trouble. So I remember drinking. I probably drank the first time when I was 12 or 13, but I remember first time drinking to excess to get drunk, and I was 14, and I got plastered on wine, and I remember my friends around at the time could feel it was something different. They could feel that it was like, he's gone a bit far there, whatever like that. But I was just drinking to be able to cry at 14, and then,
oh God,
and then the next morning none of it happened. Because you didn't want to be embarrassed or like that, so you just pretend nothing happened, and then in order for people not to be talking about you, you just do the next mad thing or whatever that is, and that obviously just ends up in a vicious cycle.
Yeah, dude. This is because this is
comedy.
Yeah. But I think that's it. It's everyone. We do all these things because we're trying to escape that pain. Thinking, when we really, it's so hard when people say, "Oh, you just got to just let yourself be and let yourself be with the feelings," and I'm like, "You know how fucking horrible that is."
I am learning to do that now in a very different way, but I think you have to. It's like you have to find your own space in the world in order to be able to start to figure these things out, and not have the. I just grew up with so much expectation on me, much expectation that I never adhered to be quite honest with you. And if my father was here, he would tell you about what a pain in the hole I was basically to him. But I can look back at it now as being a father and kind of realising I just needed to be understood, or I needed somebody to listen to me, or to go, his brain works a bit differently, so how can we embrace that? And I'm going through all that with my daughter now in school, and her brain works a bit differently, but actually if you embrace the way that she works, she flies it, like her school, she's getting on great in school and all that. Now she does, she won't sit down at the table, for example, but they work a way around that. It's not in her nature. That's what her teacher said. I can see it's not in her nature, so I leave her go around for a walk, and then she comes back, and then we'll work at this and work at that. And if I didn't have that at all. I had, my dad didn't have time because there's the church and God came first.
Yeah. Oh man, see that's it. I've got a friend of mine, Marcus Birdman.
Oh yes, I know Marcus.
Yeah, and his dad was a
That's
preacher.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
And I remember him telling me that because it's everything, and you come second to God. And you're like, that's hard to get your head around.
It's hard to get, it's something that I've had to I honestly I still wrestle with it because it's still very active today, and I personally feel like there's a little bit of a chasm between me, my siblings and my parents, because they've got 3 kids who are not religiously affiliated at all now, and they're still very much involved with it, and my dad doesn't do it as full-time work anymore, but they have that way of life is still stuck with them, so there's this weird bit of a gap, because you can see that they want to talk about stuff, but we don't talk about that stuff church-wise. And my mother had such a tough upbringing that I think, she's Argentinian, so she had a very tough upbringing in Argentina, and then she, I can see how the idea, or her religious belief, her belief in Jesus and all that in particular, is something that she holds on to for dear life. And it means absolutely everything to her. But the downside of that is that she can't communicate to me on a human level. She'll go, well, John 3:16 says blah blah blah. I'm like, I'm here. I'm talking about my breakup and abortion issues. Do you know what I mean? She doesn't, so she can't connect with me on a real level, and that's sad in a lot of ways. But you've got to learn how to love them no matter what. And it's just they're a different way of seeing things.
Yeah. It's just difficult, but like you say, when I know people that are deeply religious, and it's like, and when they start talking to me, and then I'm just like, I can't have this conversation with you, because there's a weird kind of disconnect from.
It is a disconnect, yeah.
Yeah, from what's actually happening. You're like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
But then they believe it wholeheartedly. They're there.
They're totally there. Yeah, I don't really have anything against them. I think for me the rule in life is it matters how you live your life, and it matters how you treat people. And after that, really, who really cares what your belief system is behind that? If it works for you, it works for you. But I've heard, I don't know if you've ever seen Jurgen Klopp, the former Liverpool manager. Like, I had no idea till right at the end. I had a suspicion, but he is a stonewall born-again Christian.
Oh, wow.
But you'd never know it. You'd never know it. Because, he does have that, I think it's a Quaker saying where it's like, let your life speak. So you can absolutely believe in what you want and be involved in religious institutions as much as you want. But it matters how you treat people first and foremost, for me anyway, and how you live your life in the world. And if that informs you to live your life a better way, brilliant. But I've seen both sides of that. I've seen people who are great examples in the world and people who are terrible, and how they can manipulate it into nasty, awful ways that it's just like, yeah, you need to get fucked.
But it's those people that put you off. I mean, totally. I've tried to engage with religion a few times in my life, just thinking, being around people that they were nice to be around. I'm like, oh, maybe there is something in this then. They're good people. They're nice to be around. And then I've gone along and then I remember going to this church ceremony and then they'd said to me, I've said this before on here, I think, but there was this guy go, he was speaking in tongues last week. And I'm like,
yes,
fuck, yeah. And then we do that bit where they go, right, there's a moment for sort of quiet, personal prayer, and you're sort of stood there.
Yes.
And then I heard him going, I'm like, all right, yeah, this is cool. And when he'd finished and I looked up, he kind of finished and put his head down, but then he looked around to see if anyone saw. You
God.
Tosser.
Yeah. That's like the footballers going down for a foul, but looking up to see if the referees watch them, whatever. Totally. I've been into a few of those situations. Yeah, not many, because my dad's church wouldn't have been like that at all. But I think once or twice I've been in situations where people are speaking in tongues, and I'm like, but allegedly. So you don't quite. It's hard to know, isn't it? It's hard to what's going on.
I watch a lot. I like watching the videos of like the American, like you said, the evangelical, or when they just get, and the people are just up and dancing. They go, "Oh, the Holy Spirit is within you," and I'm watching. I'm like, "Fuck!" They believe that. They are. And you go, "Fuck!" If I was there, I'd believe it too. I'd be doing it.
Yeah. No, totally. I do remember. I think wasn't it Borat? He went to one of those churches, and he did brilliant scenes of where he started going like speaking in tongues, taking the piss totally, and they're like, "The Lord Jesus is in you, brother." But
I think if it brings you comfort, then fair enough. But
totally,
it's when, like you say, it's when it's manipulated in a way that, because they're trying to get money and power off people and over people. That's when I have an issue with it.
My dad brought me once to there's an organisation, I think it's worldwide actually, called Evangelical Alliance. So it's an alliance of all the evangelical churches, and there was a big event in Dublin, and he said he wanted me to bring me along to it, and I was like, I don't want to go to this. He's like, no, I need you, because I need to go to this meeting to be able to critique it, so that we can say that we're not funding this anymore, because I don't believe in it anymore. So I need you there to pick up all the pointers for me. So he brought me along, and it was like this small enough, like boxing stadium actually, and there was like, it fits about 3,000 people, and there was all the speaking in tongues, big massive band, and then this guy came out. He's from the UK. He came out and he did this whole big sermon and all that stuff. And then we and everyone was doing the overacting, speaking in tongues and all that stuff. Then when we left, it was like insane, the amount of people it was worse than Edinburgh, people trying to fly you. They were trying to sell you books or get you to buy the merch, essentially. And I was like, so my dad was like, so what do you think? And I was like, well, it was a load of shit. I mean, he was like, he gave this wonderful sermon, and then he asked all these people to come up to the front where he could ask them so that they could have their hands laid on them so people could pray for them personally. And then he fucked off. And he went out the back. Yeah, other people did, and he's like, he's like, I've done my 20 minutes, and he walked off. And my dad said, he said, you know what the worst thing is? I said, what? He said, I heard him say the exact same sermon in 1989.
Fuck. See, this is it. Yeah, he's doing old material.
Yeah, exactly. The worst crime of all.
He's been doing the same 20 minutes for 30 years. But you know what? Sure. He still lays it out like it's the first time he said it. So fair play to him.
Totally. Yeah. And he's making bucks off it.
But that's it. You look at these guys. There was one in particular. He's this American guy. He looks evil. And he just saw and it was been proven time and again that he's taking people's money, and he's got a fleet of expensive cars and his massive house, and every time they try and talk to him, he's like, well, the Lord does this and he does that. You go, fuck, you're just a con man.
Total con man, yeah. You often get, I think once every 10 or 15 years, they always talk about there's a revival going on, and then it's another yoke of some guy in a football stadium in the US, and he's making a load of them. He's healing people. I remember very briefly dated a girl who was mad into it all, and he was healing people, and she's like, you don't understand, there's a revival going on. And a year later, he was caught riding all the fucking women. It's just like, no shit. Do you know what I mean?
Every single time. Every
time. Come on.
Like, there was a documentary about the guy that built a town, like went out into the desert, took all the followers with him, and built a town in the desert. And you go, yeah, because he doesn't want anyone to see what he's doing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Dirty fucker. Anyway, so your show, you're taking to Edinburgh. What's it called?
It's called Rascal, which is kind of my friend another comedian came up with the name for the show. He's like, I think that encapsulates your energy. But it's about kind of trying to find love and trying to find love and a loving relationship, but all the complications that have gone on with it, and how being a man has definitely affected it because of some of the stuff that we've talked about, the macho culture and the being able to express the feelings, and also my upbringing, and how that has affected it. I do think not to harp too much back to it, but the whole. I mean, I was taught from a very small age that Jesus loves you no matter what, unconditionally. But then we realise when you grow up, there's a lot of conditions to this game.
In fact, it's all conditions.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all conditions, and you're actually not accepted, and there's a lot of shame in the things that I did because I feel guilty, but it's like I wouldn't have been in there in the first place doing those stupid things if I felt I was looked after and loved in the first place. So, yeah, it looks at, the show kind of looks at love, and I have this theory about, men have our hearts broken at a very young age romantically, and then
definitely
we don't know how to deal with it then, so then we cover it all up. So I have this whole story about my first crush, which was with my junior infants teacher.
Oh man.
So yeah, there's anecdotes like that, but it talks a lot about therapy and my experiences in therapy as well, and kind of like some of the mentalness that happens in there as well,
So that's it. When you were, because you mentioned this psychiatric thing earlier. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you were experiencing that, what must that have felt like? You must have felt, because you must have been aware what was happening when you're that far sort of gone.
That's a good question. It's hard because on one level, because I'm so detached from it, but on another level, I also know, because I did try to recount it years later in therapy, and the reality is that when you're getting high as much as I was in the year 2004, that you don't remember a lot.
No.
So, for example, I remember having a conversation with my dad years later about the day that I went into psychiatric, and I said to him, and you remember my Auntie Teresa was there standing outside, and she was getting me in earlier because she worked in the hospital, and my dad was going, Tita wasn't there, and I was like, no, she was logging in the thing that she was not there. I was like, I'm fucking telling you, she was there standing there, and he's like, she was absolutely not there.
Wow.
And so there's things like that you can have episodes, dreams, hallucinations, kind of stuff that you're so high that it's hard to know exactly. I had a couple of serious overdoses and stuff like that, and other self-harming things that happened, but I don't know the chronology of them.
Right.
So I still don't know. So when did I go to psychiatric? When did that happen? And a lot of it happened on my own as well. So then there wasn't people there witness to certain things. So it's hard to figure it out. But I just remember. I think this encapsulates actually the feeling very well. I do remember. I hope this is real that happened, but I do remember sitting outside the psychiatric ward, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and there was a nurse standing there, and I remember her saying to me, "Look at him. He's the most beautiful boy in the world, and he doesn't believe a word of it." And I remember kind of feeling like she was outside, like of a glass, and I was inside this other building. And I remember looking at her, and the voice in my head going, "What a fucking idiot she is."
Wow.
So that's kind of where you're at.
Yeah,
that's kind of
yeah.
like, it's so bleak and it's so you don't want to. I mean, it's very. I don't say it's too blasé, but I understand how I ended up in that position. But you don't want to live, and it's a tough. You basically wake up every day not wanting to live while you're living your life. It's really hard, you know,
mate. And how do you cope with that? Because when you get to that point where you really want it to end, you don't. There's nothing seems to be able to sort of get you out of that mindset. And then you get that, like you said, you get that feeling of there's no hope. This is how I'm going to feel forever unless I do that thing. Yeah.
It's hard.
Did it feel? Do you remember the breakthrough when you started to sort of come out the other side? Let's do that.
I do remember the breakthrough. It's a little bit graphic, but I basically had woke up one morning after a serious overdose that I had survived, and I won't get into the gore, but I basically had lost a lot of blood, and I just remember having a real moment of a voice going, "That's it now. You've tried everything. That didn't work." So again, it's weird, kind of coming back to the religious thing, but to me in that moment, whatever God is to everybody, or whatever your own perception of God is, to me personally in that moment, that was God saying, "You've tried everything else. Now give me a go."
But I tell you what, there was a moment I remember going through something years ago, about 20 or 24 years ago or so, and I remember thinking, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I fucking hate this feeling. It feels so that level of despair. I'm like, no, I don't want this now. This is horrible. And a voice, not connected to me or anywhere around me, a voice that came from deep somewhere, just said patience. And that was it. And I don't know if that was my subconscious just telling me to calm down, or if that was something. And it's shit like that keeps me coming back to fucking religion, because I heard it. And
totally, exactly, because it is real and it did happen, and there's no doubting that. And do you know what? Sometimes we don't need to know. We don't need to have the answer to it. I don't think we have the capacity to understand all that stuff anyway. So if it happened to you and you heard it, it's real. End of story. Yeah. And you just, and it was the right thing to do. I mean, I get like that word I said to you earlier on, when that word trauma came to me, I was able to go back then to somebody in sort of situation now, because the word just came to me. Trauma, Stephen, trauma. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit, yeah. And you can go. So I think those things, whether it's subconscious, whether it's God or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter to me, because I know it exists. And that's one of the reasons that I love stand-up comedy, because there are moments in stand-up comedy that this other thing exists and you can't put words on it. You have moments as a comedian where you go, there's a connection here, or we've just gone to a place that nobody here had planned to go to, and we're there because of the connection that's happening between all of us right now. And it's not just jokes, and it's not just the funny voice or whatever like that. There are special moments in stand-up comedy that are definitely, for me, they're of another thing,
Yeah. I know exactly. I can't even describe it, but I know exactly what you mean.
That's kind of the point. Yeah. You can't describe it. You just know it from being part of it. You know it as a performer. You know it as a comedian, and the audience know what's happening as well. But nobody could tell you what it is.
No, and you can't replicate it.
I think that's a wonderful thing. No, isn't it the worst thing ever when you try to and it doesn't work? You come in the next day like, I'm gonna do this thing, but I was like, no, that was that night.
That was then. Yeah. Dude, it's been lovely having you on, man. I've really enjoyed this. Are you all right? Because you can get a bit personal sometimes. You feel all right about?
No, I'm totally cool. Yeah. I'm good. I won't talk about stuff unless I'm comfortable with them. But I'm, thank God, I'm out the other side of all that stuff, and I'm learning how to look after myself. That's why I'm in Portugal before Edinburgh.
Yeah. Oh man, great shout. It's a great shout. So where's your show going to be?
Show is going to be in the Crate Assembly Rooms at 7:45 every day.
Wonderful.
On George Square with Assembly, yeah.
Nice. And where can we find you on the socials?
I'm predominantly on Instagram at the Stephen Mullan.
Lovely. There we go.
Yeah, see you there.
We'll put all
Thanks
these
so
links
much for having me on, man. I really appreciate the chat.
really appreciate you jumping on, especially as you're away. I really appreciate it, mate. And we'll put all the links up to your show and everything else when this episode comes out. Mate, thank you very much. This has been Stephen Mullan. I've been Rich Wilson. This has been Saving Them in the Main Brain. We'll see you next time.